You speak of the need to understand the value of what nature gives us. How can people act in a way to put this into practice?
Well, it depends who the people are. So if it is policymakers and at the national level, then they need to do a few things. Firstly, they need to start accounting for the value of nature as part of the national balance sheet, which nobody does right now. And we have just begun the SEA, the System of Ecological and Economic Accounts. SEA has just begun. We already have a good system of information available through the UN Inclusive Wealth Report, but people are not using that as yet as a way of measuring national performance. So including nature in the national accounts is very important, because without that, you don't realize what you're dealing with. Second stage after that is to ensure that certain areas of very high biodiversity are given a degree of recognition. That doesn't mean pulling people out of them. It means ensuring that you ensure that communities who are living in those areas of high biodiversity are the ones who have the decision-making power to decide what happens. And I would guarantee you that they will decide to conserve, because it's in their interest to conserve. And thirdly, what you need to do is to ensure that appropriate prices are set. So very often what happens is, because areas of high biodiversity and forests and natural areas and rivers and wetlands and so on produce public goods and services. And these public goods and services, generally speaking, because they are public goods and services, tend not to have market prices. So they are not valued in our typical economic systems. So you need to create penalties for destroying what is a public good. It's not okay for a company to exploit nature, destroy nature in some way or the other, deplete it forever, and not to pay a price for that. Even if there isn't a market price, that doesn't matter. There has to be an accounting price which charges the cost of destruction to those parties who are responsible for that destruction. So regulation is required. I think collaboration, of course, is key, because without that, it would not work. So policymakers, and of course, accounting is required, recognizing the wealth of nature as an asset on the balance sheet of the nation, in the accounts of society. So there's quite a lot that policymakers have to do. But at the same time, companies have a lot to do as well. Companies have to recognize their responsibility towards public goods. They have to start measuring their impacts on nature, in addition to their impacts on society and human health and so on. But they must also measure their impacts on nature and start internalizing those costs if they are negative, and recognizing those benefits if they are positive. So in other words, behaving as if they are custodians of nature, and the size of nature that is left after their use actually matters to them, and is not something that's irrelevant. So companies also need behavior change, and they need to start measuring and reporting their impacts on nature. And that's what actually Cooperation 2020 was messaging quite strongly in its chapters on accounting for externalities.